Let's ride!
Right, 3, 2, 1.
So I saw glimpses of what it's going to be, and that really excites not just me. It excites the players. It excites us in the office. And I think the key thing is, how can we excite the supporters now to get behind it, to really kick it forward?
First and foremost, we need to create American heroes, out of the American game. During a pandemic and a crisis situation, the league will be able to pay the players. You're only able to do that because the clubs at this moment in time, by and large, are abiding by the salary cap. And there's no point in having a salary cap. Don't try and look for the shortcuts. Don't try and cut corners. If you're going to have a salary cap and you're going to have a team that's in the MLR, stick to the thing.
On any given week in America in the MLR, you'll have 168 plus professionals playing in the league. It's about getting that balance right, because a lot of those professionals maybe started playing when they were in college. They might only have just started playing. They're crossover players. They need a lot of developing. It's about getting the right amount of foreigners versus Americans to make sure the product is still a good product that people are excited about watching.
Where you really do need to ensure that we being USA Rugby are 4, 5 or 6 deep in those key positions.
When we bring in foreigners, we're bringing in players who play the game at a good level, who are going to just have so much wisdom to give young players coming out of college. So, we, like last year, will be signing a lot of players coming out of college. And the goal is that they come in as development players, and you have players who are able to teach them around the game much more than we can as coaches. So they have a value. And again, I agree with you. It's about getting that balance right to make sure that we have the right amount of Americans in the league that are getting the funnel towards the national sides at 20s, selects, and at senior level. And then to have the right foreigners in, like Man Nonu, for example, a perfect case in San Diego, who famously, there was a Wednesday, one of the first weekends that he'd been there, where the guys were all going surfing. And he's like, we're training today. And the player's like, oh, I'm not training today, I have a day off. And he goes, you don't have a day off. So he went in and he just do some extras. For 45 minutes, he'd do some stretching. It's those little tiny things that can have a really good influence. And
there's only a handful of us. If you take all of us, including all assistant coaches, analysts, everybody who's important in the management team, there's only a small group of us. Whereas if you start to scatter a Nonu and a Beast and a Rob Shaw, et cetera, you start to filter down that kind of experience. I mean, again, you're talking about a guy who's captained England 68 times, or another guy who's played 110 test matches for the All Blacks. That experience, with respect to all of us, none of us as coaches can impart that.
You touched on a great point, Gary, that there are 13, 12 franchises within the States. And if we're all doing our best to, everyone is sort of in part trying to build out an academy type system and trying to embed roots into the youth and teach the game from the ground up. And the biggest issue that we run into, and we probably saw it a bit in the draft, Greg, was the massive difference and disparity and standard between what these guys play in their collegiate rugby environments and their daily training environments to what they're going to have to be expected to do when they get to Major League Rugby level. So how can we as Major League Rugby clubs better bridge that gap?
The draft, I think the draft's a great thing. And I'm saying that where New York decided to not take our 2 draft spots for a foreign place. But to explain, we were number 9 and number 21 in the draft. And we feel that as a rugby club, we've got to look short term and we have to look long term. We have a very definite long term plan, which is, Empire play a big part of that in the community structure. But at the same time, we think that players need development before they can get into, a match day 23. Very few can come out of college and make that straight leap. So the more that we can get in there and see those young kids early and identify them, I think our job as a professional rugby club then is to find a way to have lots of touches with those players to make sure that when they go through high school, we're trying to help them as much as we can in through college, and then they naturally come and play for their local area. I mean, for now, let's just get as many people playing at an early age where, we can begin to funnel that talent into the MLR, where at the moment, I think it's come from quite a wide base where players haven't been tested in the right environment. So it's hard to make a call on players, particularly when we were drafting number 9 and 21.
I have pretty much attended almost every single MLR environment, and I'm impressed by it. I mean, it has been impressive. The level of coaching, the detail has been really good. And I think that you can see that's the reason why the competition has improved so substantially year in and year out. A professional player is a professional player for a certain amount of years of his life. It's not a long period of time. It's 8 to 10 years now. And they're entitled to earn full earning capacity, especially if it's a world-class individual. So I don't know why this sort of seems to be some form of a secret, because it's not a secret. But in terms of the sustainability, and I'm talking about the financial sustainability, if you're an owner of an MLR club, and the sustainability of the game within the US, it's almost non-negotiable. And alluding to what Greg was saying about the draft is going to be 1 or 2 players a year that you're going to get, a handful of players. It's hardly even going to be 10% of your squad. The difference is going to be from a financial and a playing development point of view is for each one of these clubs to genuinely be interested in developing decent academies within the organization. And those academies, going back to Greg's point, they've got to tap into the local universities, the local high schools, the local club game within your region that it forms part of. And I think that's really what excites me about the fact that we're going to move to 14 and potentially, I don't know, you guys, the two of you would know better than me, but a country of our size, of the state's size, if we're capping it at 18 or 20 teams and we're playing in 2 conferences, and 20 of those clubs are genuinely going into the grassroots and going to the local high schools. And even if that's spreading a radius of 200, 300 miles around and attracting that former player, very, very quickly we're going to be able to give ourselves a very good product.
If we can just keep the reins on it and keep, salaries for the next 5 years in relation to the revenue that's being turned over, and keep working away at those pots in the grassroots level, then it will continue to get better and the standard will continue to get better. The standard of the foreigners keen to come over is continuing to get better. And it's very exciting to hear you guys speaking so passionately about it.
Yeah, I mean, Rugby World Cup, obviously on the field point of view, was slightly disappointing for how hard we had worked. And, again, on reflection, I think, a lot of the things we did were in the right direction. Unfortunately, we failed to pretty much fire a shot at Rugby World Cup. And, I need to own that. That's completely on my shoulders. And if we had to do it again, I think there would have been a few things we would have done differently. But, I'm just very blessed, Tom. I mean, I've had so many amazing memories. Obviously, going to a Rugby World Cup, even though we were in the pool of death, as they like to call it, it was still an amazing experience. Absolutely can't fault our players for the dedication, how hard they worked. That was never, ever really going to be the issue, and I don't think it was at the time. I think we lost to better teams on the day, which is unfortunate because I still think, we were a better team than what will be reflected in the record books. And hence the reason why I've got such a lot of faith in this group of players. So, the 2 outstanding memories are being able to be involved with the national team that played against the British and Irish Lions and won that series. I think it's fair to say, no matter whose side you were on, it was an epic series. I mean, literally came down to a point or 2. That was the difference between winning or losing the entire series. And then also to be involved in a year where, we won a Tri-Nations, but also managed to beat the All Blacks 3 times in a row was a big deal. That hadn't been done in I can't remember. I think 1949 was the last time the All Blacks had lost 3 tests in a row.
I just had so many amazing, honestly amazing memories, and it's mainly with the people that we built it on. Like recently I was WhatsApping Gary. I'd give anything to be back in Colorado. The time that we had was just fantastic as a management group. I missed that. I always had good banter with Butcher in the national environment, as did Gary, and rightly so. And he's obviously at New York now, and Nate Brakely's there as well, who's in the national setup, as is Hanko, and Carl Sumption was there before, and Mike Petrie was there before. So you got a couple of guys who have been around that environment. They just bring back so much experience, and certainly I think that's what you look for these guys to do. But we need a rivalry. I mean, it wouldn't be the same. We want more rivalries. We want more opportunities for the supporters to get behind it and create excitement. So I think that the older that this league gets, I think you're going to see some brilliant rivalries develop, and they'll just bring more crowd and more entertainment, and we need that. So I'm all for the rivalry between Boston and New York. I think it's essential.
I reckon there are probably a couple of teams down south too, Gregory, that are putting their hand up with a big target right now that we're lining up in the sights.
Well, we don't worry about that just now. We're worrying about ourselves. But yeah, it's good to see G. I don't we WhatsApp message a lot, but I always laugh when I see him. So it's great to see you, big fan. It is. It's good to see you. It's good to see you.
Absolutely. No, it's a pleasure interacting with so many good people that are around the league and around USA Rugby as well. So Gary and Greg, thank you so much for your time. And a lot of people will learn a lot from listening to the wisdom that you guys have dispelled this afternoon.
It sits up. It's still going. Flicked it field. It's Champagne Rugby from the Free Jacks.
Let's ride!